Thank you very much for being here with us tonight, this afternoon. First of all, my name is George Predescu. I think you know me all. I'm the Consul General of Romania here in Chicago. And what we're going to do this afternoon is honoring Dr. Wendy Doniger with an award and a medal that were presented by the Romanian president this summer. I'd like to invite Dr. Doniger here. I would like also to acknowledge that Dr. Doniger is here with her son Michael. I would invite Michael also here with us. I would like to also acknowledge that we have here with us Romanian-Americans from the academic field, including University of Chicago. And I would just want to start by saying a few words that my colleague Florentina put together. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you for joining us here today at this solemn moment of celebration. We're gathered to honor the memory of an extraordinarily complex personality. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Mircea Eliade, and particularly to extend our appreciation to a most admirable follower of his work in the history of religions, Dr. Wendy Doniger, professor at University of Chicago Divinity School. As we all know, Eliade has amazed the world as a historian of religions and man of letters. His profoundly human research and creation has covered multiple levels: philosophy, history of religious, Asian studies, philology, ethnology, sociology, and folkloristics. In 1958, he was invited to assume the chair of the History of Religious department in Chicago. He remained here until his death on April 22nd, 1986, publishing extensively and writing largely unpublished fiction. Among his later works are two collections of essays, The Quest, History and Meaning in Religion, and Occultism. He also wrote a 3-volume work entitled History of Religions Ideas, and was editor-in-chief of the 16-volume Encyclopedia of Religion. We are together now, as I was mentioning in the beginning, to acknowledge the work and passion of one of Eliade's most prodigious disciples, Dr. Wendy Doniger, director of the Martin Marty Center and Mircea Eliade Distinguished Service Professor of the History of Religions in the Divinity School. Dr. Doniger's research and teaching interests revolve around two basic areas: Hinduism and mythology. Her courses in mythology address themes in cross-cultural expanses, and her courses in Hinduism cover a broad spectrum that, in addition to mythology, considers literature, law, gender, and psychology. Cross-culture offerings have included courses about death, dreams, evil, horses, sex, and women. Among her many books are 3 Penguin classics: Hindu Myths, source book translated from the Sanskrit, the Rig Veda, an anthology, 108 hymns translated from the Sanskrit, and the Laws of Manu. She has also published Siva, the Erotic Ascetic, thank you, The Origins of Evil in Hindu Mythology, and several books with the University of Chicago Press. There are so many, but I would like to just mention that there are some in progress, some that you are working on. and those are Hinduism, an alternative history, a translation of the last 4 books of the Mahabharata, and a novel, this is the one I like the most, Horses for Lovers and Dogs for Husbands. Professor Doniger, I am honored to forward you, on behalf of the Romanian President, the Mircea Eliade Centenary Commemorative Medal and Award, as they were presented this summer by the Romanian President, the Honorable Traian Băsescu. Let me just offer you the this is the award, which reads, Presidency of Romania. Mircea Eliade Centenary Award is presented by the Honorable Traian Băsescu, President of Romania, to Professor Wendy Doniger, the University of Chicago Divinity School, Bucharest, July 2006, for her outstanding research and remarkable continuation of Mircea Eliade's work in the history of religions.
Thank you very much. Beautiful.
And also, the President of Romania presented this medal, which
has
is
him on it.
Exactly, it's Mircea Eliade.
Oh, wonderful image of him. Oh, can you see the beard and the glasses?
I understood that Professor Doniger is a close friend to movie director Frank Coppola, who is doing a movie in Romania. Actually, he's finishing a movie in Romania based on a novel.
Youth Without Youth.
Youth Without Youth, yeah. And the script was made also you were part of that work.
A little part.
A little
yeah,
part.
A little part.
So we thank you so much. We are grateful for what you are doing to continue Mircea Eliade's work. And next year, as we talk, hopefully we can work together on doing more to highlight his name. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I guess it began really with the book that was his dissertation, yoga, his dissertation on yoga in Romania, which was published in English in America, going through a French version first, as Yoga, Immortality, and Freedom. It was published in 1958, which was the year that I went as a 17-year-old girl to Radcliffe as a freshman to study Sanskrit. And first book I read practically was that book, and it totally directed the rest of my studies of India, really, deeply influenced me.
Why you pick Sanskrit? What was...
Well, it was India, and it was romantic, it was ancient, it had the best stories in the world, and I always loved stories, so I knew I wanted to do Sanskrit. I'd done Latin and Greek, so I thought I would do Sanskrit. So my dissertation, which was the first book that you mentioned, Shiva, the Erotic Ascetic, was really inspired and in some ways based on Eliade's book on yoga, and I took his paradigm and changed it in some ways and developed it. And I wrote that dissertation 10 years later, in 1968, and my Sanskrit professor sent it to Mircea Eliade as the reader, the outside reader, and he took it on. He was a great man already, and he read my 950-page Harvard dissertation. And he wrote a long description of it. He passed it, so I got my PhD. And I remember it was all in French, and one of the phrases that stuck in my memory was, "Il y a des longueurs." And considering that it was 950 pages long, I think that's kind of an understatement. So he was tactful even then. And I got my PhD and went to England and had this young man, and other things happened. And then 10 years after that, in 1978, never having actually met Mircea Eliade, he brought me to Chicago. That was when I first actually met him. He was my reader of my dissertation, but I was in England, and He was in Chicago.
And internet was not popular.
No, we wrote, I have lots of letters from him from those 10 years. From 68 to 78 we corresponded. He published my first article in his journal, The History of Religions at Chicago, in 1968, the year of my PhD, my first publication. And we kept in touch, and over the years he kept saying, why don't you come to Chicago? And finally, he brought me there and really established my career in Chicago. And my first job of teaching in Chicago, remember I've been trained as a Sanskritist, I knew languages, was teaching with Eliade a course on the history of religions, a subject I'd never formally studied. I'd done Greek and Latin and Sanskrit, I'd never taken courses in religion. So that's how I learned about religion, was by teaching with him as a full professor, a subject I really had no right to be teaching at all. And he was so supportive and helpful and generous and taught me an enormous amount as a colleague in those evening seminars all those years, and became a very great friend. Now I'm the senior editor of the Journal of the History of Religions, which he published my first article in. So the wheels keep going round and round and round. And we remained close. We taught together for many years, and then we just became friends. And I was with him when he died in April of 1986. And I came home and I told Michael. Michael burst into tears and he said, oh, but I had so many more things I wanted to talk about with him. And he'd always been very generous to a young boy too, and was always interested in what he had to say, and bought you little books on science and the history of mountains or trains or things like that. There was always something.
Right.
So he was really a very close and very good friend. And I owe him my career, really. My second career, that is my real career, as a historian of religions, which was a real fork in the road for me. I would have still be doing Sanskrit verbs, I guess, someplace. It's much more fun doing this.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words. I would invite everyone to have a glass of Romanian wine in the conference room, and then we'll entertain. I hope that Professor Doniger has some time to spend here, and answer to your questions if you may want to address questions now or then in a more informal.
Either way.
Either way. So thank you so much again. It was a great honor to
Oh, it was my honor.
To,
my goodness.
And
thank you.
We look forward to continuing our work on Eliade and promoting his work and your work as well. We want to make sure that you will come to visit Romania.
I will.
Very soon.
I will. I will be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Small. So.
Yes, that's exactly.
Professor Doniger, I'm Octavian Cojan. I'm the president of Illinois Romanian-American community, and allowed me to congratulate you. And we are very happy about your work, what you are doing, presenting what our philosopher and writer Mircea Eliade did in Chicago. You are the followers. Thank you very much, and again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. What do you teach?
So I mean statistics and medicine, which seems like a strange combination.
Chiar fugeam din calea. Da,
Yes, I'm not a philosopher. I'm an engineer, so I'm the generation of Romanian engineers who work here. I work in the American industry, and I'm a professor at UIC No, at University of Chicago I teach at UIC internal combustion engines.
Wow.
I'm
Can you
very
fix a car
impressed.
if it breaks?
Yeah, I was impressed, and I'm always proud about what Eliade has brought humanity, and you are an excellent follower.
Departamentul de limbi romanice sunt în franceză și în comitetul de social thought, Committee on Social Thought, unde predau diferite lucruri.
That's very nice. So nice that you came.
Yeah. It was so nice.
And the anthems.
Yeah.
He's a very great scholar at the University of Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely.
De istorie, mi se pare cel mai bun.
My name is Father Ioan Ioniță from the New St. George Romanian Orthodox Church in Lansing, Illinois. And I did have the privilege to meet Mircea Eliade in 1976 through 1978 while I was a student in Chicago at the Divinity School at the University of Chicago. And afterwards, of course, throughout the years we kept in touch. So today's event, and I'd like to express my congratulations to Professor Doniger for a well-deserved reward and medal awarded by the President of Romania. So congratulations, first.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor, and it's a wonderful occasion. I'm surprised so many people came. It's wonderful. I was thinking about Mircea and about the way we taught together when I first came to Chicago in 1978 and knew so little about the history of religions, and he knew so much. And we taught an evening seminar, and a student would present a paper, and then we'd have a cup of coffee, and then he would respond to the paper, and then I would respond. And very often it was a really terrible paper, and I thought, oh goodness, it was so hard. What is he going to say? And then we had the coffee, and we sat down, and he would always say, I learned so much from this paper. It was so interesting. You know, it's a paper about shamanism. And you know, shamanism is such an interesting topic. And then he would go on saying these really wonderful things about the topic as if the student had made those points when really the student hadn't. And you couldn't really have a interesting discussion of what the paper was. And the student felt so good that he had inspired Eliade to say these interesting things, and we all learned something. I always learned something. And that was the kind of generous and tactful person that he was. He would respond to these really awful papers, and he was interesting even then. It was a real test. My own personal contact with him, I remember his red velvet smoking jacket that he always wore at home with the French Legion of Honor in the buttonhole. And it was a beautiful, and Christinelle kept it always so lovely. And he was quite old, but when he died, he was an old man. But he always looked elegant in that red velvet jacket, and he was always a very generous host. He always met you at the door. He had an old-fashioned European courtliness, and always made sure that you were comfortable. Always noticed what I was wearing. That's a new pair of earrings you have on, he would say. There was always an elegance, but then there was also really serious talk. And you had a glass of wine, but you didn't just talk about the weather. He would say, I've read this new book. Have you seen this book? And off we would go, and it would be a discussion of some really obscure religious phenomenon, or an African tribe, or a piece of art that had been unearthed in ancient Greece or something. And the courtliness and the elegance were really a part of the intellectual curiosity, the love of life, the general. It was like a child. He was always interested in things, not like an old man, but like a young boy. Oh, what is that? Have you seen that? And that's what I remember. I remember his curiosity.
So, in spite of all the controversy, in the last years, how do you think Mircea Eliade will be remembered by the generations, to come, or years after all this controversy will go away?
Well, I think you said it in the last line. I think the controversy will go away. After all, the life of the human being is really only important to the people who knew him. And as he gets older, and we all get older who knew him, that'll be gone, and there'll be really nothing left of that life except the writings. And the writings are very, very important. So I think things will pass. I think also there's a moment in academic history where people are really curious to find out anything bad they can about anybody. Their politics, their alcoholism, their womanizing, whatever it was. And that goes, and that's a big surprise, and you find it out, and then it's all over. And we don't think of Hemingway as an alcoholic. We think of Hemingway as a writer. You either like Hemingway's writings or you don't. So I think that the controversy really is about his life, and indeed about his rather early life in Romania in the 30s, and that I think that's already vieux jeu and not very interesting anymore. The writings will live on, I think, more in the world of the general public than in the world of scholarship. His imprint on scholarship is very subtle and very deep, and people aren't always aware of how much they are quoting Eliade when they say something like hierophany, a word that is just in the language of scholarship, the manifestations of the sacred, or even the paradigms or the sky gods, certain ideas. It's rather like Freud's introduction of the word unconscious, which people use even if they think they don't like Freud or know Freud. So I think his vocabulary is built into the study of religion now, even by people who no longer read his books. But I think his books, The Sacred and the Profane, Patterns of Religious, History of Religions, the books are part of the general reading public of historians and of geographers like Paul Wheatley, who wrote The Pivot of the Four Quarters, all about Eliade's ideas about the sacred center. So I think that's where the work will live on, is in the mind of the general reading public and in the vocabulary with which we study religion. And the rest is just smoke.
Wonderful. The work will speak for itself.
Yes.
So, yeah, wonderful. So congratulations once again, Professor Doniger, for a well-deserved reward.
What would be, in a few words, the wisdom, of what you are doing, and what would be the wisdom, in addition to what you have already mentioned about his natural curiosity, about learning from mistakes, about being, always seeing the unseen. So I would like, what would be the wisdom that you gained today here?
It's a day, that we honored Professor Doniger. So the wisdom for me is to follow in the steps of these great scholars, Mircea Eliade and Professor Doniger.
Today was not so much a learning day as just a sort of a thank you day, really. It's a great honor to have the Romanian president aware of scholarship. Most diplomats and presidents don't really notice things like people who write books about the history of religion. So it's rather wonderful that Romanians in general care so much about Eliade. I don't know of any other scholar of religion anywhere in the world who is so honored by his own country, let alone by the world at large. So I think I was very moved to see, not for the first time either, I must say, not surprised, but once again moved to see how much Mircea Eliade means to Romanians altogether and to the Romanian government. So that's quite wonderful, really wonderful.
Speaking about the research, I would like to know what was the focal point, or what was, the most important to be remembered about his research, and how is it continued in your research?
Well, I guess the single most important thing for me, different people read different parts of Eliade. He wrote so much, and different people have used different parts of his work. For me, the most important part of his work, and I think really his greatest work, really, was about India. To me, that work is even more insightful than his more famous comparative work about religion in general. And his insights into yoga and into immortality. The book was called Yoga, Immortality, and Freedom. And he understood things about Indian ideas about immortality, which are very profound and which really meant a great deal to me at the beginning of my work and still do. So that's really a small corner of his work, but that's the corner that was personally meaningful to me. The world at large, I think, will remember him for other ideas, but that's what was important to me.
Eu sunt Mircea Sabău, am predat la University of Chicago în departamentul de radiologie, sunt specialist în fizică medicală și l-am cunoscut foarte bine pe Eliade și am cunoscut-o și pe doamna Wendy Doniger. Am putut ca să particip mai de multe ori în compania lor la diferite conferințe, diferite manifestări. Pe de altă parte, sunt și membru la Academia Romano-Americană și în cadrul Academiei Americane, româno-americanii au fost sărbătorite Eliade, chiar în anul morții sale și doamna Wendy Doniger a venit, că a fost un congres la Paris, care a fost în cinstea lui Eliade, încât mi-a făcut deosebită plăcere ca să o reîntâlnesc aici, în cadrul ăsta festiv și mă bucur foarte mult că a fost premiată de către președintele României ca dovadă că s-a apreciat atât activitatea ei cât și activitatea lui Eliade.
Ce aspect al lui Eliade, omul, credeți că a fost astăzi recunoscut aici și acum? Deci din prisma dumneavoastră. Deci doresc un unghi subiectiv.
Eu l-am cunoscut pe Eliade ca scriitor în primul rând, dar și ca profesor de istoria religiilor. Am putut să discut cu dânsul și despre problemele despre sacru, în special când fiica mea, Isabela Sabău, care și ea este profesoară la Northern-Illinois University, a fost deosebit de impresionată de publicațiile lui Eliade și a făcut o teză de artă bizantină, în care, mă rog, a conversat și cu profesorul Eliade despre această teză.
Deci considerați că este vorba de contribuția la sacru care ar trebui recunoscută?
Sigur, asta este una din importantele contribuții ale lui Eliade, dar una din contribuțiile de care el a fost totdeauna mândru a fost studiul miturilor. El s-a considerat întotdeauna un mare specialist în explicarea și înțelegerea miturilor. Și modul cum a pus problema în general, arătând că există în studiul religiilor o serie de noi idei, atât pentru societatea modernă, cât și pentru înțelegerea trecutului, fac ca această știință să progreseze și el într-adevăr a adus o contribuție esențială la dezvoltarea istoriei religiilor aici în Chicago.
Vă mulțumesc. Am să vă rog să vă prezentați.
Sunt Alexandru Darida, artist plastic, trăiesc în Chicago și creez aici de aproape 17 ani. Sunt reprezentat de Masterpiece Publishing în America, ei mă reprezintă în toate galeriile și mă bucur să reprezint oarecum arta românească.
Aș dori să-mi spuneți din perspectiva artistului ce importanță are evenimentul de astăzi, cum simțiți munca lui Eliade recunoscută aici și acum, din perspectiva artistului și a omului care dezvoltă o viziune.
Sigur, îmi exprim bucuria de a fi aici și de a participa la acest eveniment atât de important și sunt atât de bucuros că Mircea Eliade cunoaște un loc atât de proeminent în istoria lumii, în istoria religiilor din întreaga lume și s-a putut desprinde oarecum de perimetrul României și să pătrundă, să fie o explozie în lumea internațională. Ca și artist plastic mă bucur să fiu aici și cu ocazia 100 de ani chiar am făcut portretul lui portret care va fi donat în viitorul apropiat și va fi atât la universitate cât și la cei care doresc să aibă imaginea lui Mircea Eliade atât de vie în memoria lor și să fie într-adevăr o piatră de hotar în întreaga filozofie internațională. Ceea ce mă bucură din ce în ce mai mult este că atâtea nume românești se desprind oarecum din hotarul strâmt al României și pătrund tot mai mult în conștiința internațională.
Numele meu este Rodica Bărănescu, sunt de profesiune inginer, de ocupație manager în în cercetarea în industria de automobile. Sunt membră a Academiei Naționale de Engineering a Statelor Unite și sunt profesor la University of Illinois în Chicago. Meseria mea, deci, e o meserie tehnică, însă sunt foarte mândră că printre intelectualii de elită ai României îl avem pe Mircea Eliade ca o icoană și sunt mândră și emoționată că am putut să sărbătorim astăzi un eveniment de importanță.
Ar fi să îmi găsiți un cuvânt cheie care să lege cercetarea dumneavoastră de cercetarea lui Eliade. Care?
Este interpretarea filozofică a tot ceea ce creează omul și spiritualitatea. Și noi trebuie să interpretăm filozofic ceea ce creăm noi pentru omenire și noi în meseria mea creăm bunuri care se bazează pe energie și care fac viața mai simplă și care facilitează transportul oamenilor și al produselor. Și trebuie să abordăm într-un mod filozofic și global și cu demnitate, dar și cu umilitate, ceea ce facem.
Cred că semnificația acestui eveniment este faptul că asistăm la un moment prin care activitatea și relația profesională specială pe care doamna dr. Doniger a avut-o de-a lungul anilor cu Mircea Eliade este pusă în valoare. Este de asemenea important că doamna Wendy Doniger este, ca să zic așa, practic inclusă în acest cerc al continuatorilor muncii lui Mircea Eliade într-un mod mai vizibil și am discutat cu dânsa posibilități de a promova imaginea și activitatea lui Mircea Eliade în anul următor.
În ce mod?
Cu ocazia celebrării a 100 de ani de la nașterea profesorului Eliade. Vom avea o serie de discuții la nivelul conducerii universității în ideea de a identifica câteva acțiuni. Cred că din discuția cu doamna Doniger a reieșit un interes al dânsei de a promova realizarea probabil a unui bust dedicat lui Mircea Eliade în România și probabil că asta este una din ideile importante. Cred că putem să realizăm un concurs în România cu sprijinul instituțiilor, probabil Ministerul Culturii, va fi implicat Ministerul de Externe. De asemenea, poate și o altă lucrare, poate un tablou sau un alt tip de lucrare care să poată fi expusă în cadrul universității. O altă idee pe care i-am sugerat-o doamnei dr. Doniger este posibilitatea de a marca numele străzii pe care a locuit Mircea Eliade în campusul universitar, cu o plăcuță comemorativă care să fie atașată, după cum știți, în sistemul orașului Chicago se practică acest gen de plăcuțe comemorative care se atașează suplimentar denumirii străzilor. De asemenea, am explorat posibilitatea realizării unor manifestări în cadrul universității, probabil niște mese rotunde, una sau două evenimente de acest gen în timpul anului viitor, cu invitații din Statele Unite, dar poate și din alte universități, inclusiv din România, poate ca o continuare a evenimentului pe care Universitatea din Chicago l-a găzduit în perioada 3-5 noiembrie anul acesta. Este îmbucurător faptul că doamna dr. Doniger dorește să susțină aceste eforturi ale noastre și sunt încrezător că vom putea, cu sprijinul dânsei și a conducerii universității, să găsim cele mai bune oportunități de a promova activitatea și personalitatea lui Mircea Eliade, așa cum se cuvine în 2007 în Chicago.
Florentina Vianu, viceconsul. Legat de evenimentul din această zi, pot spune că a fost o emoție mult așteptată pentru a recunoaște încă o dată valoarea lui Mircea Eliade, o personalitate extrem de complexă și vizibilă. Ne-am bucurat noi nu numai la nivel național românesc, ci și pe plan internațional. Și de asemenea am onorat și am adus gândurile noastre bune și aprecierea noastră doamnei profesor Wendy Doniger, care este o urmașă care și-a meritat poziția ca discipol al maestrului Mircea Eliade și de care suntem mândri și cu care sperăm să rămânem în legătură de acum încolo.
Octavian Cojan, președintele lui Illinois Romanian-American Community, așa cum spunea și domnișoara consul, evenimentul de astăzi pentru comunitatea noastră reprezintă un element deosebit, deoarece este pus în valoare Mircea Eliade, care a făcut cinste și care cred că este unul dintre cei mai prolifici scriitori și profesor la fost profesor la University of Chicago în domeniul religiilor și poate unul dintre cei care cunosc cel mai bine acest domeniu. Ne bucurăm că acest eveniment a venit să ofere această distincție doamnei profesoare Wendy Doniger, care și-a exprimat regretul că nu a putut să participe la Congresul Internațional de la București, dar am apreciat în mod deosebit poziția dânsei că a dorit ca această distincție să-i fie acordată pe pământ românesc, deci aici la consulat. Și iată-ne astăzi aici, având plăcerea și onoarea de a participa la acest eveniment de înmânare a acestei înalte distincții și suntem bucuroși că am avut o audiență în mod deosebit, o audiență academică, profesori din toate domeniile de origine română cu care ne mândrim în Chicago.